Okay, so as we forge ahead in Chapter 8, we have a whole bunch of artists that we need to go through. I'm going to start with Chuck Berry, who I mentioned at the end of the last video, and we are going to listen to Maybelline. But before we do that, it's really interesting to think about Chuck Berry. His style actually kind of reminds me of Elvis, his vocal style. He has a lot of initiative when it comes to his vocal style, which is, of course, a lot like Elvis, and being clever and being new and being something that no one's ever seen before. He was overshadowed by Elvis, unfortunately, but he is a very fine musician and should be known for his work in the field. What he really had the most value as far as other musicians emulating him in the future really was his electric guitar style. He really had a lot of flair and finesse with his instrument. Unlike Elvis, who just had his acoustic guitar and kind of used it as background, Chuck Berry was a real showman when it came to his electric guitar style. So let's take a listen to Maybelline. This is in your book on page 258, if you would like to follow along with the form. It tells a really cool story about this crazy girl. This is verse 1. That's the chorus. Verse 2. Another chorus. Okay, now he's going to do a solo. This is very different than what Elvis would have done. Check out his style. So awesome. Verse 3. Last chorus. You can hear that Boogie Woogie Blues piano too. Instrumental coda. So there is Chuck Berry. He really was quite a showman. I really love listening to his music and watching him. It's really cool. And so in the interest of time, we're going to move right on to Elvis. Elvis was born in Tupelo, Mississippi. I'm actually from Memphis, Tennessee, so I know quite a bit about Elvis. I went through his house in Tupelo. It really is actually a 2-room house. He was very poor. Actually got some of his early musical training from some of the blues guys that he met in Tupelo. And they moved to Memphis actually to find a better job. He was discovered by Sam Phillips and really made Sun Records quite famous because it was an independent label. Colonel Tom Parker was his longtime manager. And, of course, there's a lot of rumors that he maybe took advantage of Elvis, and that might have been true. I'm not going to so much get into that stuff. We're going to stick straightly straight really with his music. Of course, he always got in trouble because he seemed to be too sexual or vulgar for the time period. Of course, things are much different now, but he was a huge artist at the time, probably set the stage for the Beatles in the 1960s. So notice in his vocal style here, we've got some interesting stuff going on. And yes, there is of course, what they call a regional accent, but he's got a southern accent. He's got this little cute hiccup that he does with his country inflections. So the Jordanaires, I do want to mention that because most people don't know who his backup group was, and they were actually called the Jordanaires. It says here they were rooted in white gospel. This is true. Elvis even put out a number of gospel albums, and he was very well known for his gospel music. So let's listen to Don't Be Cruel, and this is also in your book, page 266. Verse 1.
If you can't come around, past the streets, telephone, don't be cruel. The heart is true. Baby, if I made you mad, something I might have said, please don't forget the past. The future looks bright ahead.
That's verse 2. Chorus.
The heart is true.
Extension of chorus.
I don't want no other love, oh, baby, it's still you are.
Very simple song. There's that little inflection. There are the Jordanaires. Verse 3. Chorus.
Why should we be apart? I really love you, baby.
Hiccups. Verse 4. Chorus. Now we kind of have a tag here. Kind of what they call the concluding chorus. All right. So, I would love to spend an entire video on him. He had a very interesting life. His greatest influence, I think, was in his early years. He continued to be very popular throughout his life, even at the end of his life, in a little bit different way, but still very famous. So very quickly, let's go through two other artists that were very important for this era, that maybe don't get quite as much recognition. Of course, we all know Buddy Holly, but Buddy Holly is kind of coined as the opposite of Elvis. He's very straight-laced. You can see they're all wearing a suit. And the way that they have their band put together was very influential for the Beatles. We've got the Crickets, and then we have the Beatles. And they really took a lot from Buddy Holly and his setup in the way that he had his band perform. So let's listen to just a little bit of That'll Be the Day, and this would be Buddy Holly.
Say goodbye, yeah, that'll be the day. When you make me cry, you say you're gonna leave. You know it's a lie, 'cause that'll be the day. When I die, well, you give me all your loving and you hurdle, darling. All you hurt you kisses and your money too. Well, you know you love me, baby. Till you tell me maybe that someday, well, I'll be. Well, that'll be the day. When you say goodbye, yeah, that'll be the day. When you make me cry, you say you're gonna leave. You know it's a lie, 'cause that'll be the day when I die. Good night.
Sorry, that was Ed Sullivan saying goodnight. So we're going to leave them. I just wanted you to actually get an idea who Buddy Holly was. Of course, he lost his life at a very young age, and we would have loved to have known what would have happened to him after, you know, his early success, but that we will never know. I want to talk a little bit about Wanda Jackson. Wanda Jackson was actually well known for her kind of her country songs, and then she was interested in this rockabilly idea that maybe Elvis is kind of into also, but she never actually had a hit. They just weren't ready for this kind of female star. She's really rocking out here, and I would like for you to hear her. I think she was actually at Coachella maybe 3 or 4 years ago. She's like 80 and she's amazing. But let's look at this early performance of hers so you get an idea of what the pioneers of women in rock and roll were doing at the time.
Do you like love songs? Well, we think this is one of the most beautiful love songs that's ever been written, and we'd like to do it especially for all of y'all. It goes like this. Do that again, that's pretty. So with a hard-headed woman, a soft-hearted man, been a causing trouble ever since the world began. But don't you, oh yeah, ever since the world began. Woo, yeah. With a hard-headed woman, it's a thorn in the side of a man. Well, Adam said to Eve, now listen here to me, don't you let me catch you messing around that apple tree. But don't you, oh yeah, ever since the world began. A hard-headed woman is a thorn in the side of a man. You betcha, yeah! Well, I heard about a king who was doing swell. Then he started playing with that evil Jezebel. Oh, yeah, ever since the world began.
Yeah, so you can see she's really got a great style to her. Her vocal style, the way that she moves, it's really excellent. And it's kind of too bad that she didn't get more press at the time because she was really cool. Next up, we've got Ritchie Valens, who was on the Latin side of rock and roll or R&B. His style was really based in the son music of Mexico, S-O-N. It was kind of like our American folk music, but Mexican in nature instead. And so there's a little bit of mariachi, a little bit of this folk influence in his music. So I do want to hit him before this video is over. So let's get a little of the Latin influence here. Ritchie Valens, I'm sure you've all heard La Bamba before. You can hear the caracas and the moving bass line, sort of the style of mariachi. I sure hate to stop this music. It's so fun. But that bass line may have been played by a tuba in mariachi. Occasionally you might see a bass, but that moving bass line is very indicative of the traditional Mexican style of music. Very quickly, the Kingston Trio, I want to bring them up real quick. They were a folk band that really had influence on the folk singers of the 1960s, such as Peter, Paul, and Mary or Bob Dylan. And so I want to point them out first before we get there. They'll be coming up really soon. So let's listen to a little bit of the Kingston Trio. This is a song about Tom Dooley.
Condemned man named Tom Dooley. Tomorrow at sunrise, Tom Dooley must hang. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Hang down your head and cry. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Poor boy, you're bound to die. Met her on the mountain.
And I'm just going to let our video play out with Tom Dooley here. And I'll see you guys in chapter 9.
With my knife. Hang down your head, Tom